You know that moment when everything falls apart and you feel your mind starting to crack under the pressure. When the voice in your head whispers that you're not strong enough, that you can't handle this, that you're going to break completely. Machiavelli discovered something shocking about people in that exact moment. Something so counterintuitive that it revolutionized how we understand mental strength. Across multiple cases of complete devastation, empires lost, fortunes destroyed, lives shattered, he observed a pattern that modern neuroscience now confirms. He found that the human mind has a hidden mechanism that only activates during total breakdown. Most people never discover it because they're too busy trying to avoid the break. But the few who understand this mechanism don't just survive their worst moments. They emerge with capabilities they never knew they had. Here's what Machiavelli called the forge principle. Your mind isn't designed to avoid being broken. It's designed to be reforged into something unbreakable. And the moment you think you can't handle anymore, that's exactly when the real transformation begins. The year was 1513. Francesco Sforza sat in chains, stripped of his empire, his army destroyed, his allies dead or fled. The kind of devastation that breaks most men's spirits forever. Every prisoner in that Milanese dungeon had given up, except one. While others wept or raged or planned desperate escapes, Sforza did something that seemed impossible. He began training his mind like a weapon, reading philosophy by candlelight, exercising in his cell until his body became stronger than before his capture, planning his return with methodical precision while his enemies assumed he was finished. Machiavelli, studying this phenomenon, realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. A man using his worst moment to forge mental strength that couldn't be broken by any external force. 6 months later, Sforza walked free. 2 years later, he had reclaimed his throne and destroyed everyone who betrayed him, not through luck or help, but through a mind that had been tempered in suffering until it became unbreakable. Machiavelli called this the forge principle, and today I'm going to show you exactly how to train your mind to become strongest when life tries to break you. Because what Sforza mastered, and what changes everything, is that your worst moments aren't meant to destroy you, they're meant to forge you. Because here's what Machiavelli discovered that modern neuroscience now proves. Your brain is literally designed to become stronger under pressure, but only if you know how to activate its forge mode instead of its fracture mode. Dr. Martin Seligman's research at the University of Pennsylvania reveals what Machiavelli observed centuries ago. When faced with adversity, your mind can go one of two ways: learned helplessness or post-traumatic growth. The difference isn't in what happens to you. It's in how you train your mind to process what happens to you. Think about it from a biological perspective. Your ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and predators not because they avoided hardship, but because their minds adapted to become stronger through each challenge. The ones who broke under pressure didn't pass on their genes. You're descended from mental survivors. But here's where it gets fascinating, and this is where Machiavelli was centuries ahead of his time. Your brain's stress response is actually a training system. Every devastating moment is your mind's equivalent of lifting heavy weights. The breakdown is temporary. The strength gain is permanent. When you apply the right mental training during your worst moments, you don't just survive them. You emerge with capabilities you never had before. Neural pathways that can handle exponentially more pressure. Mental muscles that become unshakable. But that's not the most powerful part. The most powerful part is what happens to your sense of self when you prove you can rebuild from nothing. Your entire identity shifts from person who can be broken to person who becomes stronger when broken. Dr. Richard Tedeschi's groundbreaking research on post-traumatic growth shows that people who train their minds correctly during crisis don't just recover their previous level of functioning. They develop what he calls anti-fragile resilience. They become exponentially stronger than they were before the trauma. Think about the last time you faced a crisis. Maybe you lost a job, went through a devastating breakup, faced a health scare, or watched a dream collapse. Your natural instinct was probably to resist the pain, to try to get back to normal as quickly as possible. But what if I told you that normal was your enemy? What if the goal wasn't to return to who you were, but to use the crisis to become someone you never could have been without it? This is what Machiavelli called the transmutation principle, the mental alchemy that transforms lead into gold, weakness into strength, breakdown into breakthrough. Imagine you're facing the worst moment of your life right now. Your mind is screaming that you can't handle this, that it's too much, that you're going to break. But instead of believing that narrative, you remember Sforza in his cell, reading by candlelight, planning his return. You ask yourself, how can this moment forge me instead of break me? What mental muscle is this crisis trying to build? What strength am I about to discover that I never knew I had? This isn't positive thinking. This isn't denial. This is strategic mental conditioning that weaponizes your worst moments against your limitations. Machiavelli identified 5 specific mental forges that transform crushing experiences into unbreakable strength. Master these 5 forges, and you'll never fear adversity again. You'll hunt it. Forge 1. The clarity crucible crisis burns away all the noise and reveals what actually matters. When everything else is stripped away, you see your true priorities with laser precision. Machiavelli wrote, "The prince learns his kingdom's true value only when he loses it." Most people waste this clarity by trying to rebuild their old life immediately. Instead, use the clarity to design a better life. Ask yourself, what did I think mattered that actually doesn't? What do I now know is essential that I was ignoring? Forge 2. The capability furnace extreme situations force you to develop capabilities you never knew you had. When your normal support systems disappear, you discover internal resources that were dormant. You learn you can handle far more than you believed possible. Document these discoveries. Keep a capability inventory of every new strength you uncover during crisis. These aren't temporary adaptations. They're permanent upgrades to your mental operating system. Forge 3. The character kiln. Pressure reveals who you really are beneath the social masks. Crisis strips away pretense and forces authenticity. You discover which of your values are real and which were just convenient social performances. This is terrifying, but liberating. Many people discover they were living someone else's life, following someone else's script. Crisis gives you permission to become who you actually are, instead of who you thought you should be. Forge 4. The connection. Crucible adversity reveals who your real allies are. Fair weather friends disappear. True relationships deepen. You learn to value quality over quantity in every aspect of life. But here's the deeper truth. You also discover your capacity for self-reliance. You learn that while connection is beautiful, your fundamental strength comes from within. You become less needy and more generous. Forge 5. The courage foundry. Every crisis you survive expands your courage capacity. You prove to yourself that you can face the unthinkable and emerge intact. This creates what Machiavelli called cascading fearlessness. Each conquered fear makes the next one smaller. Most importantly, you learn the difference between reckless bravery and strategic courage. You become brave not because you don't feel fear, but because you've trained your mind to function effectively while afraid. Let me show you how this forge training transforms 3 critical life battlefields where most people's minds shatter under pressure. The career devastation. Marcus was a rising executive when his company collapsed in a scandal. Overnight, he went from corner office to unemployment line. His industry contacts stopped returning calls. His carefully built reputation was radioactive. Old Marcus would have panicked, taken any available job, tried desperately to rebuild his previous status. Instead, he applied forge training. He used the clarity crucible to realize he'd been climbing the wrong mountain. He'd been pursuing prestige instead of purpose. The capability furnace forced him to learn skills he'd been too comfortable to develop: sales, digital marketing, direct client relationships. The character kiln revealed he'd been performing successful executive instead of being authentic. The connection crucible showed him which relationships were real. The courage foundry gave him the strength to start his own consulting firm, focused on ethics in business. Within 2 years, he was earning more than his previous corporate salary while doing work that aligned with his actual values. The crisis didn't destroy his career, it revealed his true calling. The relationship apocalypse. Sarah discovered her husband of 12 years was having an affair with her best friend. The double betrayal shattered her sense of reality. Everything she'd built her identity around, being a good wife, having loyal friends, creating a stable home, crumbled in a single conversation. Old Sarah would have fought desperately to save the marriage, blamed herself, tried to win back her friend, done anything to return to the familiar pain of a broken relationship rather than face the unknown of starting over. Instead, she applied forge training. The clarity crucible showed her she'd been accepting crumbs of affection while giving unconditional love. She'd been so afraid of abandonment that she'd abandoned herself. The capability furnace forced her to develop independence she'd never cultivated. She learned to manage finances, make decisions alone, rebuild social connections from scratch. The character kiln revealed she'd been performing perfect wife instead of being an authentic partner. The connection crucible taught her the difference between being loved for who she pretended to be versus who she actually was. The courage foundry gave her strength to demand relationships where she was valued, not just accommodated. 18 months later, Sarah had rebuilt her life around authentic relationships, meaningful work, and genuine self-respect. The betrayal didn't destroy her. It liberated her from a prison she'd been too comfortable to escape. The health crisis transformation. At 35, David was diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune condition that would require lifelong management. The diagnosis shattered his identity as someone young, invincible, in control of his destiny. He faced a future of limitations, medications, and uncertainty. Old David would have fought the diagnosis, sought miracle cures, raged against the unfairness, tried to maintain his previous lifestyle despite his body's new limitations. Instead, he applied forge training. The clarity crucible revealed he'd been taking his health for granted while pursuing stress-inducing goals that weren't actually important to him. The capability furnace forced him to learn about nutrition, stress management, and his body's signals in ways that made him healthier than many people without chronic conditions. The character kiln showed him he'd been defining his worth through achievement rather than being. The connection crucible deepened his relationships as people saw his vulnerability and authenticity. The courage foundry taught him that accepting limitations can paradoxically expand your real capabilities. 2 years later, David had become a health coach, helping others navigate chronic conditions. His illness didn't limit his life. It gave his life meaning and direction it had never had before. But here's where forge training gets psychologically dangerous. When you master the ability to grow stronger through adversity, you start to seek out challenges that would terrify most people. You begin to see comfortable stability as weakness. You start creating crises just to prove you can handle them. You become addicted to the high of overcoming impossible odds. This is what Machiavelli called the phoenix trap, the seductive danger of believing you need to burn to soar. Some people become crisis addicts. They sabotage relationships when they get too comfortable. They quit jobs when they start succeeding. They create drama because peace feels like stagnation. Others become emotional islands. They convince themselves they don't need anyone or anything. They mistake isolation for strength and emotional numbing for resilience. Don't make these mistakes. The goal isn't to seek suffering. It's to extract maximum strength from the suffering that life inevitably provides. Machiavelli understood that true mental power isn't about being unbreakable, it's about being anti-fragile. The difference is crucial. Unbreakable things are rigid. They resist pressure until they snap. Anti-fragile things bend, adapt, and emerge stronger. The master knows when to yield and when to resist, when to seek challenge and when to rest in stability, when to forge alone and when to build with others. But when crisis does come, and it will come for everyone, you'll be ready to transform it into your greatest victory. Here's your execution framework. I call it the Forge method. Master these 5 elements, and you'll never be broken by life again. F. Face reality. Completely never minimize the severity of your situation. Don't sugarcoat. Don't rationalize. Don't immediately jump to everything happens for a reason. Look directly at what you've lost, what you're facing, and what might get worse. This isn't pessimism, it's strategic assessment. You can't forge strength from challenges you refuse to acknowledge. Sforza didn't pretend his prison cell was comfortable. He faced the full reality of his situation before he began planning his response. Advanced technique. Write down the absolute worst-case scenario. What's the most devastating thing that could happen? Once you face that possibility mentally, you can plan from a position of clarity rather than fear. O. Organize your identity crisis. Reveals which parts of your identity were real and which were just circumstances. Separate who you are from what you had. Your job isn't you. Your relationship status isn't you. Your bank account isn't you. Ask yourself, if I lost everything external, what would remain? That core essence is your unshakable foundation. Everything else can be rebuilt, but it should be rebuilt around your true self, not around recreating old circumstances. Advanced technique. Create an identity inventory. List everything you thought defined you. Mark which ones are external circumstances and which ones are internal qualities. Focus on strengthening the internal qualities while letting go of attachment to the external ones. R. Reframe the narrative. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, how is this strengthening me? Instead of, what did I lose? Ask, what am I discovering? Instead of, when will this end? Ask, what am I building? This isn't denial or false positivity. It's strategic mental framing that directs your brain toward growth instead of victimhood. Your mind will always find evidence for whichever story you tell it. Choose the story that empowers action. Advanced technique. Write 2 versions of your crisis story. First, write the victim version. All the unfairness, all the losses, all the reasons you can't recover. Then write the hero version. The challenges you're overcoming, the strength you're building, the person you're becoming. Notice which version makes you feel more capable of effective action. G. Generate new capabilities. Every crisis demands skills you don't currently have. Instead of lamenting this gap, embrace it as an opportunity for rapid growth. Financial crisis teaches money management. Relationship crisis teaches emotional intelligence. Health crisis teaches self-care. Document every new capability you develop. These aren't just survival skills, they're permanent upgrades that will serve you long after the crisis passes. You're not just solving a problem, you're building a more capable version of yourself. Advanced technique. Create a crisis curriculum. What skills is this situation forcing you to learn? Approach it like you're earning a degree in advanced life management. Study systematically, practice deliberately, measure your progress. E. Execute relentlessly. Forge training only works if you take consistent action despite emotional turbulence. Your feelings will lag behind your decisions. You must act your way into feeling better, not wait to feel better before acting. Start with the smallest possible step, then the next smallest. Build momentum through micro-victories. Your mind needs evidence that you're not helpless, that you can still influence your circumstances. Advanced technique. the 1% rule. Each day, do something that makes you 1% stronger, 1% more capable, or 1% closer to your new reality. These tiny improvements compound exponentially over time. In relationships, Forge training requires surgical precision. You're not trying to become emotionally invulnerable. You're learning to maintain your center while still being genuinely connected. When someone you love betrays you, disappoints you, or abandons you, your natural instinct is either to chase them desperately or wall yourself off completely. Both responses give them power over your emotional state. Instead, apply Forge training. Ask yourself, how is this painful experience teaching me to love more wisely? What boundaries am I learning to set? What kind of person do I need to become to attract healthier relationships? The Forge doesn't make you cold, it makes you discerning. You learn the difference between vulnerability and victimhood. You open your heart to people who've earned access while protecting yourself from those who haven't. But here's the revolutionary part. When you're not desperate for any particular person's approval or presence, you become far more attractive to high-quality people. Desperation repels. Centered strength attracts. This doesn't mean playing games or being manipulative. It means becoming so grounded in your own worth that you can offer genuine love without losing yourself in the process. The key difference in relationships is that Forge training should increase your capacity for healthy intimacy, not decrease it. You're learning to love from strength rather than need, to connect from wholeness rather than emptiness. When you know you can rebuild from nothing, you stop being afraid of loss. When you're not afraid of loss, you can love freely. When you love freely, you attract people who can match that freedom. Online, Forge training becomes even more critical because every challenge, every criticism, every failure is potentially permanent and public. Your mental strength is tested in front of an audience that never forgets. When you face public failure, humiliation, or attack online, every instinct screams to defend, explain, or disappear. But remember Sforza in his cell, the strongest response is often the most unexpected one. Instead of defending your failure, own it completely. Yes, I failed. Here's what I learned. Here's how I'm rebuilding. This response is so rare that it actually increases respect rather than diminishes it. When facing online criticism or trolling, resist the urge to engage defensively. Instead, demonstrate the mental strength you've forged. Respond with curiosity about their pain, not anger about their attack. Or don't respond at all, showing that their opinion can't disturb your peace. The beautiful thing about demonstrating Forge-trained mental strength online is that it's witnessed by thousands of people. You become known as someone who can't be broken, who grows stronger under pressure, who maintains grace during storms. But here's the advanced digital strategy. Use your online presence to document your Forge training process. Share the lessons you're learning, the strength you're building, the capabilities you're developing. This serves two purposes. It reinforces your own growth, and it gives others permission to see their struggles as Forge opportunities rather than just problems. However, be careful not to perform strength rather than embody it. Authentic Forge training shows vulnerability alongside resilience. It admits the pain while demonstrating the growth. It's human rather than robotic. But here's what nobody tells you about Forge training. It doesn't just change how you handle crisis. It fundamentally alters your relationship with life itself. When you've proven to yourself repeatedly that you can rebuild from nothing, you stop being afraid of loss. When you're not afraid of loss, you can take risks that terrified you before. When you can take bigger risks, you can create bigger rewards. You develop what Machiavelli called the confidence of the twice-born, someone who has died symbolically and been reborn stronger. This isn't arrogance. It's the quiet certainty that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes. Most importantly, you realize that your worst moments weren't obstacles to your best life. They were the forge that created it. You couldn't have become who you are without going through what you went through. But this transformation comes with a responsibility. You become a living example that breakdown isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a better chapter. People will look to you during their own crises, seeking proof that survival and growth are possible. This is the ultimate gift of Forge training. You don't just become unbreakable yourself. You become a beacon of hope for others who are still learning that their worst moments can become their greatest strengths. You'll start noticing people in crisis differently. Instead of seeing victims, you'll see potential phoenixes. Instead of offering pity, you'll offer perspective. Instead of trying to rescue them from their forge, you'll help them use it. This awareness can be both beautiful and lonely. Beautiful because you can genuinely help people transform their suffering into strength. Lonely because you realize how few people understand that crisis is curriculum rather than catastrophe. There are 3 levels of mastery in Forge training, and understanding where you are will help you progress toward true anti-fragile resilience. Level 1. Reactive Forging. You apply Forge principles during crisis. This alone will transform your life because you'll stop seeing adversity as evidence that something's wrong and start seeing it as evidence that you're being strengthened. At this level, you're still surprised by challenges, but you respond to them strategically rather than just emotionally. Most people get stuck here because they only remember Forge training when they're already in crisis. By then, their nervous system is activated and clear thinking is harder. This level is about building the habit of strategic response rather than reactive collapse. Practice with smaller challenges first: the delayed flight, the rude customer service representative, the friend who cancels plans. Use these minor irritations to strengthen your Forge training muscles so they're ready for major challenges. Level 2. Proactive Forging. You deliberately seek out challenges to build strength before crisis finds you. This is where you start treating your mind like an athlete treats their body, with intentional training regimens designed to increase capacity. You take on projects that stretch you. You have difficult conversations you've been avoiding. You do things that scare you in controlled environments, so you're prepared when fear comes in uncontrolled environments. This level requires wisdom about which challenges serve your growth versus which ones are just unnecessary suffering. You're building strength, not collecting scars. The goal is strategic strengthening, not random hardship. Level 3. Integrated Forging. Forge training becomes so natural that you no longer think about it consciously. You've internalized the truth that all experience, pleasant and painful, contributes to your strength and wisdom. You respond to both success and failure with equal composure. At this level, people start describing you as unshakable or centered without being able to articulate why. You've developed presence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes. This isn't because nothing bothers you. It's because you've proven to yourself that you can transform anything that bothers you into strength. You become a stabilizing force for others during chaos, not because you don't feel the impact of difficult situations, but because you've learned to process that impact in ways that increase rather than decrease your capabilities. The secret that separates Level 3 masters from everyone else. They've learned that Forge training never ends. Every day offers opportunities to build mental muscle. Every interaction contains lessons about resilience. Every challenge is practice for bigger challenges. But I need to give you a warning about this mental training. Once you realize you can rebuild from any destruction, you might start to see other people's attachment to comfort and security as weakness. You'll watch friends avoid necessary changes because they're afraid of temporary discomfort. You'll see family members stay in limiting situations because the known pain feels safer than unknown possibility. This knowledge can make you impatient with people who haven't learned that security is an illusion and that real safety comes from adaptability, not from avoiding change. Use this awareness compassionately. Remember that you weren't born with Forge training. You developed it through necessity and practice. Others haven't had your experiences or your training yet. Don't become the person who thinks everyone should just get over their struggles because you've learned to transform yours. That's not strength, it's callousness, born from forgetting your own journey. The highest level of Forge training includes emotional intelligence and empathy. You help others discover their own strength without dismissing their current pain. You become a guide, not a judge. Remember, just because you can handle massive challenges doesn't mean you should create them unnecessarily for yourself or others. The goal is readiness, not recklessness. Wisdom, not just resilience. Most importantly, don't let Forge training make you emotionally unavailable to the people you love. The strongest mind is one that can be both unbreakable in crisis and tender in connection. The ultimate mastery isn't never feeling pain, it's feeling pain fully while maintaining your capacity for effective action and genuine love. Remember that broken man who trained his mind in a prison cell? Francesco Sforza didn't just reclaim his throne, he built an empire stronger than the one he'd lost, because he understood that the mind forged in suffering becomes capable of achievements impossible for minds forged in comfort. Machiavelli wrote in his private notes, "I watched a man transform his greatest defeat into his most powerful victory. The prison that was meant to break him became the forge that made him unbreakable." 500 years later, neuroscience has proven what Machiavelli observed through pure genius. The brain that learns to grow from adversity develops capabilities that the comfortable brain never discovers. But here's what Sforza understood that most people miss. Forge training isn't about becoming emotionally numb or impossibly tough. It's about learning that your mind's capacity for strength, adaptation, and renewal is far greater than you've ever been taught to believe. Your worst moments aren't punishments, they're invitations. Invitations to discover capabilities you didn't know you had. Invitations to shed limitations you thought were permanent. Invitations to become a version of yourself that can only be forged in the fire of real challenge. Most people run from their forge moments. They medicate the pain, distract from the difficulty, or blame external circumstances for internal experiences. They waste the very experiences that could transform them from fragile to anti-fragile. Your enemies, whether they're people, circumstances, or your own limiting beliefs, are hoping you'll break under pressure. They're counting on you to collapse, to give up, to prove that you don't have what it takes. Disappoint them. Use every challenge as a forge. Use every setback as strength training. Use every breakdown as a breakthrough opportunity. Because when you master Forge training, you realize that life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. Every difficulty is curriculum. Every crisis is commencement. Every ending is a new beginning, disguised as a conclusion. Sforza knew this. He understood that the strongest minds aren't those that never face hardship. They're the ones that learn to alchemize hardship into gold. That's the real transformation Forge training offers. Not just survival, but the kind of thriving that's only possible for minds that have been tested, strengthened, and proven in the crucible of real challenge. Master this training, and you'll never again fear what life can throw at you. You'll know that whatever comes, you have the mental tools to not just survive it, but to use it as fuel for becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable than you ever imagined possible. That's the ultimate victory. Not avoiding the forge, but learning to dance in the flames until they transform you into something unbreakable. The comments are going to be fascinating on this one. Some of you are already going through your forge moment right now and recognize exactly what I'm talking about. Others think this sounds too intense, too demanding. That reaction itself reveals everything. Growth always feels uncomfortable to minds that haven't been strengthened yet. The question is, are you ready to stop being broken by life and start being forged by it? Share your Forge training experience in the comments below. If you're ready to explore more of Machiavelli's insights about mental strength and psychological warfare, Check out my video on how to become untouchable, Machiavelli's Psychology of Power, where I reveal the mental techniques that make some people impossible to intimidate or manipulate, and how to become untouchable in life's most challenging moments. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension.